Good morning, it's Loren Lockman from the Tanglewood Wellness Center in Costa Rica, and I've been asked this morning to talk a little about food combining. First of all, let me point out that many people say that food combining is not important, that it's not real, it's not an issue, and I would strongly disagree with that and would suggest that anybody that finds that any combination of food together works just as well is probably not, their system's probably not functioning as well as it could be. The more efficient and responsive, the more efficient the system is, the cleaner the system is, the more responsive it's going to be, and the more it will let you know when you've made a bad choice. And if you think about this from the perspective of our own development, if you were to feed many of the things that adult human beings eat to a baby, the baby would probably have a rather strong and harsh reaction to that. Okay? That's not because they're not as healthy, it's not because they're not as strong, it's because their systems haven't been bastardized by years of toxic choices. And so they're actually higher vitality and much better able to respond in the way that the body was designed to respond. If you look at what happens in nature, animals virtually without exception will eat one food at a time. And then they either satisfy their hunger, or they run out of that food, or they lose their taste for it. They may later go find something else, but they're rarely going to assemble a variety of things and make that a meal, which is what most people do. And of course, we're doing this largely as a result of the fact that we're consuming things that are really not ideal for us and that don't even have very much taste to us. So we have to use all kinds of flavoring enhancers to make our food taste okay. This is normal food, a standard American diet or even a standard vegan diet. Most people are not simply eating the natural foods that were provided for us by nature. And when we do that, when we eat simple meals of whole foods only, we're going to taste things eventually. Once the taste buds have been able to regenerate, we're going to taste things that are going to blow us away. They're going to be so much more powerful and subtle than the flavors we're used to consuming. So food combining may seem like it doesn't have much value because we're so used to eating a whole variety of things. But when we get the body clean and then we stick to whole foods only, you will notice a significant difference. And a simple example, the example I've been using for years, if you eat a banana, your amazing body says, no problem, I can create the perfect environment for the optimal digestion of this banana right here in the stomach. Okay? If you eat a grapefruit, your amazing body says, no problem, I can create the perfect environment for the optimal digestion of this grapefruit right here in the stomach. If you eat those two things together at the same time, what happens? Your body cannot create two very different environments in one vessel, the stomach, at the same time. And because of the significant differences between bananas and grapefruits, they need different environments, different pH, different enzymes. It's digesting one is not the same thing as digesting another. The body makes and secretes various enzymes for each food that we eat. In fact, as soon as we eat anything, while we're chewing food up in the mouth, the tongue is registering exactly what the composition of that food is, so that your digestive tract is not only prepared to digest that food as completely and well as possible, but your small intestine is prepared then to assimilate, to absorb and assimilate as well as possible. And so, the point is that it does make a difference. So the banana and grapefruit don't combine well together because they're very different from each other. But when we're looking at the world of foods that do belong in our bodies at all, we're talking first of all about fruit, we're talking about soft, tender, leafy greens, and we're talking about some nuts and seeds. From my perspective, we're not actually talking about much more than that. We can mention some other things, but those are actually the only categories that really belong in the body at all, that our bodies are actually adapted for. You'll notice I didn't mention vegetables. Right? We call ourselves vegetarians and vegans because the idea is it's based on vegetation, but it's often people think of this as a vegetable diet. And yet the only vegetables I eat on a consistent basis for more than 20 years are soft, tender, leafy greens. Okay? Because the other vegetables are the cruciferous vegetables, broccoli, Brussels sprouts, cabbage, cauliflower, kale. These things are all typically very difficult for our bodies to digest in their natural state. High cellulose content. Cellulose is defined as indigestible fiber, and so most people consume these things raw and they get gas. Okay, that should be telling us something. We're not efficiently digesting these things. And the good news is we don't need to eat them at all, because we don't need the anti-cancer nutrients if we're not causing cancer. If we're not doing all the things that actually create cancer, we don't have to worry about that. That's a different paradigm, right? What we want to do instead is think about not only what provides us with the nutrients we need, but also what are we attracted to, and what can our bodies efficiently process. And I think ultimately when the body's clean enough, what we're attracted to is what provides us with nutrients and what our bodies can efficiently process. So most of the time we get the body clean enough, we actually don't want the broccoli and the kale and the cauliflower. What we want are the mangoes and the papayas and the watermelons, and maybe some soft, tender greens. Now remember, our closest primate relatives eat the tip of a soft leaf and throw the rest away. Okay, we don't need to be eating dense leaves because they have more nutrients. So what? We don't need more nutrients. We need to more efficiently assimilate and use what we already have, what we're already taking in. So back to food combining. Let's look first at the fruits. Okay, we'll start with high water content. That's melons, the highest typically. Watermelon, cantaloupe, canary melon. There are many others. Melons should always be eaten by themselves. Okay, they do not combine well with anything. It's primarily because they are so easy to digest that mixing them with anything else almost guarantees a problem. Because if you eat the melon and you're eating something else at the same time, it doesn't have to be on the same plate. It could be a moment later we have something else right on top of the melon. What happens in that case? You okay?
Yeah.
You want a mat?
It's just easier from laying down on my back.
Okay.
It hurts in the chair.
If we eat anything else with the melon, what happens is the melon is in 15 or 20 minutes is digested and ready to pass out of the stomach. But if there's anything else in the stomach at the same time, the melon has to wait for whatever else is there to be digested. While it's sitting in this wet, dark environment, it begins to ferment. When it ferments, it's creating gas. It's acidifying the system. It's creating alcohol. It's creating vinegar. It's creating problems for the body, toxic compounds. And this is what happens anytime we eat food poorly. And so, people often have said to me, well, Loren, everything you say sounds great, but I don't do well with fruit. And often what they're really telling me is, all these years I've been having fruit on top of my meals, I haven't felt good. Well, of course not. You have a regular meal and finish it off with fruit, the fruit's going to be fermenting in your system all the time. But when you eat just the fruit by itself, it's not an issue. And when you eat just one kind of fruit at a time, or two fruits or more that are really well combined, you'll minimize the problem as well. So melons by themselves, and ideally one kind of melon at a time. Because what combines best with watermelon?
Watermelon.
More watermelon.
Yes.
Exactly. Nothing else is exactly the same. Therefore, nothing else needs exactly the same environment for optimal digestion. So the best we can do is one kind at a time. And from someone who typically eats 2 meals a day, I can tell you one of the hardest things is having all this wonderful stuff around and only having 2 things a day. When there are all these different things I'd love to eat, but I'm only going to eat 2 a day. So I'm really listening to my body. What does my body most want? And I think that's actually helpful in a way. It forces me to really pare down and get really clear. I don't want to not give my body what it wants. So if it's really wanting the mangoes, I'm going to have the mangoes because I only have one more chance today, most days. It's not like I can't eat more than twice. I choose to eat twice most days. Okay? All right, now from melons, we go next to acid fruits. Acid fruits tend to be, and there may be some exceptions to this, including papayas. Papayas are very high in water content, but typically the acid fruits are going to be the next highest group as a group. Oranges, all the citrus, so oranges, grapefruits, mandarins, all the citrus fruits are very high in water content, typically 92, 93% water. Pineapples are very high in water content. Kiwis, strawberries, all these things are high in water content, and they have a relatively high acid content as well, and so we call them acid fruits. Acid fruits, what combines best with a grapefruit? Another grapefruit. But the next best combination with the grapefruit would be something else in an orange or a mandarin, because it's very similar in composition and structure. And so it's going to require very similar environment for its optimal digestion. After that, after you get past the citrus, the next best combination would probably be another acid fruit, a pineapple or something else. Okay? All right, so we start with melons, we have acid fruits. The next group that logically follows is subacid, but I'm going to skip subacid for a minute. So if you're taking notes, leave a space there. And after subacid, we have sweet fruits. And you'll see in a second why I'm skipping subacid for now. The sweet fruits include bananas, cherimoya, egg fruit, durian, jackfruit, sapote, and that whole family of fruits. There's quite a few, but it's a much smaller category than the subacid fruits. So it's easier to give you the acid and the sweet, because everything left over is subacid. Okay, I'll give you a few examples, but you understand the sweet. So the sweet fruits, these are things that don't combine well at all with acid fruits. Again, the banana and the grapefruit, because if you think about it, what could be more different than a grapefruit in terms of fruit than a banana? It's pretty hard to think of something. One is much drier than the other. One is much sweeter than the other. Completely different composition, and they don't do well together. And you're going to find that none of the sweet fruits really do well with any of the acid fruits. So they really should be separated. And remember, we had acid, and then we skipped subacid and sweet. But if you're doing them in this way, in a logical format, the acid and the sweet don't touch. They shouldn't be together. Okay? We've separated them in space. They should be separated in our diet as well, not eaten at the same time. Subacid, which falls between, does okay with acid and not so bad with sweet. But in my opinion, most of them are really closer to the acid than to the sweet. So the subacid fruits are going to include mangoes, papayas, among the tropical fruits. Among the, if you're in North America or Europe, you've got apples and pears and all the stone fruits, peaches, plums, nectarines, apricots. The vast majority of fruits are subacid. And subacid fruits, like everything else, one combines best with itself and then with something else from within that category. And I would suggest that an apple and a pear might be a better combination than an apple and a mango, simply because they're more similar, and therefore I would expect would require more similar environments for optimal digestion. And I think it's that simple. Okay, we can complicate it, but we don't need to. So acid and subacid's okay. Subacid and sweet is okay. Acid and sweet, not a good combination. Okay? So, dates with your acid fruit, you probably don't want to go there. Dates, we have bananas, a meal of bananas with a couple of dates thrown in, that's okay. Have a meal of dates with a couple of bananas thrown in, probably not such a great idea, given how sweet dates are and the glycemic load of dates. But that's a whole other subject, which I've already covered. You can find this on my channel. Okay. Now, so we have so far again, we've got melons, acid, subacid, and sweet fruits. We talked just the other day about a whole bunch of fruits that I haven't covered yet. How about all the fruits that people think are vegetables? Right? Where do they belong? Well, tomatoes. A tomato is a fruit, at least around the world except in the U.S., where it's legally a vegetable, declared so by law. A tomato is a fruit because it's a fleshy covering of seed. But tomatoes have a high acid content. A tomato is really an acid fruit. Okay, it's not very sweet, and because it doesn't contain much sugar, and sugar content varies, but because it doesn't contain nearly as much sugar as most other acid fruits, it doesn't contain that many calories. But it's an acid fruit. Where does a cucumber belong? What does a cucumber remind you of? If you think about, forget about the size, but think about the shape, the consistency, the zucchini. Okay, what else? Forget about the size. How about a watermelon? It kind of looks like a skinny little version of a long watermelon. I would suggest it's in the same family. It is in the same family, and really doesn't digest so well for many people with other things. So I've had many clients over the years who said, I have problems when I eat salad. I don't feel good. I get a stomach ache when I eat salad. I get a bunch of gas when I eat salad. I'll usually ask those people one question. Does your salad include cucumbers? If it does, take them out and see how you do. Because a lot of people have trouble digesting cucumbers with other foods. Okay? And in fact, cucumbers, the normal cucumbers that you see in North America, right, the ones that look like this, about that big around, those cucumbers are actually eaten before they're ripe. They're still green. So they're going to be even harder to digest. Now, the English cucumbers and some of the Persian cucumbers, I'm not sure about. I'm not sure if they will also turn yellow with given enough time, or if green is where they end up. But the ones that we typically eat, they're not really ripe yet. They don't taste very good if you let them ripen. People wouldn't actually want to eat them that way. They lose the texture, and the taste isn't that good. But that's why many people have some trouble with cucumbers. So if that's the case, you may not want to include them. But technically, I would suggest if you like cucumbers and you do okay with them, you might be best off eating them by themselves. Some people are going to be better off by themselves. Okay. Avocados probably deserve their own category because they're the only fruit that I know of. Olives are probably close behind that are so high in fat content. An avocado is going to vary quite a bit, and depending on the variety, might be anywhere from probably 40 or 50% fat up to a high of about 80% fat. And there's nothing else that we eat in terms of fruit that I know of that's nearly that high in fat. People think durian is a high fat content fruit. A durian is maybe 17% fat. And again, an avocado can be more than 4 times that much per calorie. So avocados are wonderful, probably not what you want to be making a meal of on a consistent basis. You can eat them, and I think you can eat more than one if your body handles them, depending on where you are. But because I would not put them in the same category as nuts and seeds. I think it's a mistake to think all fats are the same. Avocados are fruits. As they ripen, the enzymes break down the fat, and so assimilating those fatty acids isn't nearly the same challenge as assimilating, as digesting nuts and seeds and having to do all the work to process that stuff. But avocados, because of their high fat content, they're really different than anything else. They combine well with acid fruits. Okay, so acid combines well with fat. Whether it's nuts and seeds or it's avocados, you can do pretty well with acid and fat.